Well, we are now one step closer to the Republican-led Congress spending another $1 trillion. So we'll talk a little bit about that. And we'll have part 2 of our conversation with Dr. Kevin Wacasey. All this on this episode of Trend Chat. And welcome to another episode of Trend Chat. I'm your host, Brian Bledsoe. And if you want to connect with us, whether we're on Facebook, Instagram, or Twitter, it's all the same name, Trend Chat 24/7. And I write for politichicks.com. Just if you want to read some of my articles, just go to politichicks.com/author/Brian Bledsoe. And don't forget about the book, Politichicks: A Clearing Call to Political Activism, which is available on Barnes & Noble and Amazon. Whew! I just wanted if I could just do that one breath, and I almost didn't make it. So, as I mentioned, we are one step closer to spending another $1 trillion. Thanks to our Republican-led Congress, those fiscal responsible, politicians up there, they are so fiscally responsible that they're just spending just like Democrats, basically. And here we are. Like I said, we're one step closer, meaning, so it passed the House on today, and now it's going to the Senate. And we got to pass it because that government shutdown, if we don't pass anything by Friday, the government will shut down again. And you know how Republicans are when they have the prospect of any bad press. That's when they get the most skittish, the most cowardly in a way, because we got to do something, because we don't want to look bad to the press, because basically we're scared of our own shadow and we're scared of what Democrats will say and all that. And so anyway, let's just spend some more money. Not only that, and let's continue to fund Planned Parenthood. Let's basically give Democrats what they want. And it's funny because when the Democrats were in control of the House or even the Senate, they definitely didn't give the Republicans as much as Republicans are so willing to give the Democrats whenever these spending bills come up. They are just bending over backwards, just breaking their, I can't say they're breaking a spine, because they don't really show to have much of a spine. So it's not really, I guess bending over backwards would be like Gumby for them. There's nothing for them because they really have no spine. So anyway, that really just kind of came out of nowhere. I don't even know where I was going with that analogy. But yeah. So after and also it's pretty much just a formality that the president will sign it, which okay, that's not surprising either. I would actually just hope that it wouldn't even get to his desk in the first place. But you know what? Like I said, it's going to the Senate. Who knows what's going to happen? You already heard about Senator Rand Paul, what he might do as far as, I don't know, you could say like a filibuster or something. And also, Senator Cruz has already tweeted about that he'll be voting against it for a long list of reasons. I would urge you to go to to Twitter and just read Senator Cruz's list of things of reasons why he's voting against this bill, which I'm actually want to find it right quick to go go down the list somewhat. I can't go through it all because, like I said, we need to get to this conversation of the part 2 of our conversation with Dr. Kevin Wacasey. But just for a second, let's see if I can just go through it right quick. So Senator Cruz posted on Twitter, like I said, he went down the list. So at first it started off with, it's basically like a thread, and it started off saying, this is why I'll vote against the omnibus spending bill. And so one, it would be, I'm just going down it right now. So, well, like I said, it funds Planned Parenthood, funds sanctuary cities, provides, it fails to provide sufficient funds to properly secure our border. It tells federal agencies that they can spend taxpayers' money to study the causes, quote unquote, causes of gun violence, and mandate that, make no mistake, will be abused by future liberal administrations to manufacture evidence to try to violate law-abiding citizens' Second Amendment rights. I actually didn't even know about that one. It funds the Exim Bank, Export-Import Bank. And, so just from those, I didn't even finish them because, like I said, I know we need to keep moving. But, yeah, this is just another example of the difference in when we talk about conservatives and Republicans. When you talk about Republicans, most of them are pretty moderate. So, and just like these are the ones who are always willing to compromise, always willing to, do everything the Democrats want, but can care less about people within their own party. The conservatives will care about. They're more concerned about pleasing the other side as opposed to the people that vote for them. And this is nothing new. So it's not. It means me bringing this up. I'm just saying it, but it's not like this just happened yesterday. So, and I'm just thinking about, because we're still in primary season. Some of them, some of the primaries are already passed, like in Texas, but not all of them. And things like this, if you're so much against what's going on, like with this spending bill, or even if whatever else that happens, people need to be held accountable. And I don't know what your breaking point is. What is your deal breaker for a member, a member of the House or your senator? What is the breaking point? What is the point of no return? What is the final straw that will have you to support someone else in a primary, given if they have a primary opponent, or if in the future for you to maybe yourself to run against that member, or to support someone else. Incumbents are hard to get out. And it's not like this is another thing that is nothing new. But personally, I just feel like there should be a lot more turnover, especially in the primary season. It should be compared to the outrage that you hear. Like, whenever a member vote for something or do something that the people don't like, it seems like they're just mad for a couple of minutes and then they just totally forget about it. And, I can understand people not really paying attention 24/7 about the bills that these members pass or whatever, which that is one of the reasons why we're in this predicament, actually, because not enough of us are engaged enough. That's the reason why we're where we at. And I say it all the time. A lot of our problems, a lot of what is going on, it all comes down to 3 little words. We the people. We the people. 3 words. It all comes back to that. Whether you're engaged or not, it all comes back to that. Because if you want any sort of change, that's where it's going to have to come from. So we get the government that we deserve. Because if you don't like what's going on, you go to the ballot box, and that's where you make your voice known. It's as simple as that. And if you don't, okay, you get what you get, and this is what we got. So, all right, I don't want to go on too long. I know like I said, we need to go. I just want to make one more thing clear. If you hear about Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer, if you hear either one of those 2 people saying that they approve or saying things like this is a tremendous victory or that this is a great day or we are I guess we like what is in this bill from the Republicans. If you hear Nancy Pelosi or Chuck Schumer basically complimenting Republicans, that is a clear indicator that you're doing it wrong, Republicans. If you're a Republican and you have said something to where they agree, talking about legislation, I'm saying, but if you propose a bill and they say, I think I kind of like that bill, you know what, you ought to just change it right there. Or if they agree with you and want to vote for something, 9 times out of 10, if it's of any significance, then you should probably change your vote to whatever. If they say yes, you ought to say no. Because neither one of them are up to any good for anything. Okay, I'm not going to say just anything, but I'm just saying. I mean, there could be some little stuff, but I'm saying any legislation of any significance, put it that way. If they're for it, 9 times out of 10, you probably should be against it if you're a conservative, I'm saying. So anyway, that's just the one thing I wanted to bring up. Just wanted to make that clear. Now, all right. Like I said, we're gonna get to part 2. We was talking about Obamacare, so this is one of the other things that's also in this bill. This whole bailout of Obamacare of the insurance companies, because Republicans failed to repeal Obamacare. So because of their failure last year, now we have to literally pay for it, because in this $1 trillion monstrosity is a bailout for these, companies of Obamacare. At least that's what it was. It'd be great if that was taken out. Hopefully, it might be taken out in the Senate tomorrow. So, in that, we continue with our conversation with Dr. Kevin Wacasey. And before that, let's hear from our friends with the Founding Project.
Hello, Trend Chat fans. The Founding Project invites you to experience our latest resource to take civics to citizens, TFP's new website. Visit us at www.thefoundingproject.com. Be a part of the civics movement with the Founding Project. The Founding Project is a 501c3 education nonprofit. Join us today.
So, yesterday in part 1, we ended on a question. And so Dr. Kevin Wacasey was talking about where the healthcare market is going to reset eventually, kind of like the housing crisis and how everything reset after the bubble. And so he's saying the same thing was going to happen to the healthcare market eventually. And so my question to that was, is one of those things that's going to go in the direction of this reset that he mentioned. Is one of those things going to, is one of those factors is the individual mandate being taken out through the tax bill. And so that was my question. And here is his answer. And we're going into the conversation.
I like to say it was a dang good start. That is a good start. And let me give you a little background on why I think the individual mandate exists in the first place. And I'll see if you disagree with me. I'll write about this in that first book, The Guide to Buying Health Insurance and Healthcare. So rewind 15 years or so to a point where, let's say around the turn of the millennium, in the year 2000, the Y2K thing was going on. What else was happening that was a rage was the health insurance industry was changing. And so we were getting health insurance deductibles that were rising. They were going up through the roof. And so we started seeing these things hit four figures. And in fact, one of the longest strikes in U.S. history occurred back in 2002, I believe, on the West Coast. The grocery stores, Ralph's and Albertsons, the workers went on strike. 70,000 workers went on strike for, I don't know, a year or two. Cost the companies $2 billion. You know, one of the things they were upset about, Brian, was the fact that their deductibles were going to $1,000. Now, today we would call a $1,000 deductible really good health insurance, right? But back then, it was such a new deal. It was such a how dare you that these workers went on strike. Well, the health insurance industry started changing back then. They started raising the deductibles. And so what that did was that put more and more exposure onto the people themselves, onto the actual patients who were having to pay more and more out of pocket, obviously. Well, this made a lot of people upset, but the health insurance industry just kept right on doing it. They just kept right on doing it. And so we've gotten to a point now, again, where I go back to this, where the health insurance industry has the best of both worlds. You can pay them thousands of dollars a year to buy something that you'll almost never get to use. Well, what are people going to start doing when that becomes too burdensome? They start realizing that, hey, I'm paying thousands of dollars a year for something that I don't ever get to use anymore. It's not a question of $5 copays and my insurance takes care of everything. They start dropping the policies. They start dropping plans. They start saying, well, heck with it. I'm not going to do health insurance anymore. I'm just going to go pay a doctor again. Well, the health insurance industry can't have that, can they? So one of the things that they did in 2010 was they bought off Congress. They bought off the Obama administration. They helped craft this legislation that we know as the Affordable Care Act. And a couple of things they slid in there was an individual mandate and an employer mandate. So that if anybody who thought about getting out from under the health insurance umbrella, forget it. You can't anymore. If you do, you're going to get hit with fines. We're going to make it so that it's painful for you to drop your health insurance. Now, everybody thinks that this was a government trying to look out for everyone. No, this is the health insurance industry making sure that everybody bought their product. I mean, can you get that? I mean, to me, that makes the most sense. And in fact, I say in my book that if health insurance hadn't become allied to employment back in the 40s and 50s, then by the 70s, health insurance would have been a very fringe product sold door to door because we wouldn't have needed health insurance because the prices of health care would have kept pace with inflation. But instead, the health insurance took over as the third-party payer. Again, what I said earlier is all that did was drive the prices of health care through the roof. And so it became a self-defeating or a self-fulfilling prophecy. Another one of my tweets that I love to put out there, and it's in my book, Healthcareonomics 101, is I say, why do we at Acme Health Insurance not protest, or why don't we scream about the $100,000 in hospital charges that you get for a week's stay in the hospital? Why does Acme Insurance really not say anything negative about that? They should be, right? Because they're the ones paying for it. Well, first of all, because Acme Health Insurance isn't paying $100,000 on that bill, they're probably paying $3,000 on that bill because of the negotiations behind the scenes they've made. And secondly, and this is much more important, is that $100,000 in charges helps maintain the illusion that you need Acme Health Insurance to protect you from that $100,000 in charges. Do you see where I'm going with that? It is brilliant. It is genius. And so the health insurance industry has, number one, driven the prices of healthcare up through the roof, and number two, they make a heck of a living off this illusion that healthcare is so costly. In fact, this is what I call the big myth of healthcare. And that is this, that the costs of healthcare are so high that you need health insurance to cover the cost of healthcare. You don't. I mean, most of healthcare is very inexpensive, and you should just be paying for it out of pocket. I have a podcast that I've started, but I haven't kept up with it. I did one episode of video podcast. It's on my blog at healthcareonomics.com. But in that video podcast, I break down my cost in my clinic that I offer patients an antibiotic injection. It is the most expensive antibiotic injection that I offer patients. It's $35 is what I charge for it. But the actual medication, the syringe, the needle, the alcohol wipes, and the Band-Aid, all that stuff, guess what it costs me to buy all that? Less than $3. It cost me $2.76 or thereabouts, factor in a little change. But $2.76. Now that's how much it costs me to buy that antibiotic injection. That is not costly. I mean, that is cheaper than probably what it costs, or that's probably about the same as what it would cost Whataburger to build you a cheeseburger, out of the meat and the bun, et cetera, and all that stuff. So healthcare is not inherently costly. It's just way, way, way overpriced. And the health insurance industry is both the cause and the recipient of the benefit of that situation. And it is something that just needs to be busted. It's the big myth of healthcare, and I aim to bust it every way possible.
So with that, and in your practice, so how do you fight back?
Well, okay, so to me, the secret weapon in all of this are people. It's ordinary Americans. A lot of folks say that doctors are the ones who got us into this mess, and no, I disagree with that. I mean, the health insurance industry is what got us into this mess, and they actually took over health care. Again, I detail this in my first book back in the 70s when they introduced the $5 copay. That was a bit of brilliance that will go down in history as one of the smartest business tactics ever used. Unfortunately, it's also one of the worst things to ever happen to our healthcare system because they absolutely took over patients at that point. Imagine me coming to you, you're Dr. Bledsoe, and I work for Acme Health Insurance or XYZ Health Insurance Company, and we'll rewind back to the 70s or early 80s. And I'll come to your office one day and I say, hey, Dr. Bledsoe, guess what? All of our patients, and we control, the 70% of the people that live in your zip code have us as their insurer because they're employed by this giant tuna canning factory outside of town. And we have their health insurance contract. So they all come through XYZ Health Insurance Plan, and they all pay $5 to see the doctor within our network. Now, how much are you charging them, Dr. Bledsoe? You want to charge them $35 for a visit, or $40, or $20 even? You can't compete with our $5 copay now suddenly. So Dr. Bledsoe either has to join the network, or you might end up having to go work at that tuna canning factory, man, if you don't, because you're not going to make it as a doctor charging folks $35 when now they can go see other doctors in town for $5, for a $5 copay. So that's how the health insurance industry took over healthcare, plain and simple, right there was with the $5 copay. And it was brilliant, and it was very effective. The problem now, though, and I put a tweet out about this, how did doctors lose control of healthcare? Because the health insurance companies introduced the $5 copay. And the next question is, how will doctors regain control of healthcare? Because health insurance companies introduced the $5,000 deductible. And so my point behind that statement is that the $5 copay is gone now. That you may still have a $5 or $10 or $20 copay, but that's not it. You're going to get balanced bill because you now have a $5,000 deductible. And again, this makes it so that people ought to want to just pay for their health care because guess what? You're going to pay for it anyway in the end. I mean, it may take them 6 weeks to start sending you bills, but you're going to pay for this no matter what. It just will happen, trust me. And so to me, it makes a lot more sense to just pay for it as you go. Pay for the routine stuff, ask about the price, see what you can negotiate, get a receipt. then submit that receipt to your health insurance company and say, look, I want credit toward my deductible for this. I spent, XYZ at the doctor or for this medication or for these labs. I want some credit toward my deductible. They may give it to you, they may not. But in any case, it's better to spend $100 on something and not get credit toward your deductible, in my book, than it is to spend $1,200 on the very same thing just so that it counts toward your deductible. And so people are the key to all of this. When you ask me how I fight back, I try to educate people. That's what I'm on a mission to do. In fact, my slogan is, I'm out to change healthcare by changing the way you think about healthcare. Because it's not the way it used to be. We are now out of Alice in Wonderland, and we're back to the normal situation where, people, it's a service industry, and people should be paying for it. They're responsible for paying for it anyway, so they might as well get a much better deal, pay for it at the time of service. Everybody's a lot happier. But it's going to take Americans doing that, because as soon as millions of them do, guess what's going to happen to the prices? Those $12 aspirins will be a thing of the past. In fact, I doubt that people who pay cash get billed for aspirins, because it's going to cost more for people to bill you for an aspirin than it is just to shovel them down you when you need them while you're being cared for. So the prices of healthcare will drop precipitously. The customer service will go up significantly, and I think everybody will be a lot happier after all this gets shaken out in the end. It's going to take a while. There's no doubt about that. And it's not going to be a very pretty transition. But I can tell you that once people get it, they really get it, and they understand that it behooves them to now take charge of their own healthcare, especially if they have a $5,000 deductible. Now, a question I would have for your listeners is that if you have a $500 deductible or a $0 deductible, how much are you paying for that health insurance to have all that kind of so-called benefit? Because that's a whole nother podcast we could talk about where the health insurance industry is ripping people off left and right. Let me ask you a good question, and I mean this. Would you ever spend $3,700 extra in premiums just to save $3,000 off your deductible? Let me rephrase that. Would you spend $3,700 on a plan that has a $0 deductible versus saving $3,700 to go for a plan that has a $3,000 deductible? Would you do that?
No.
I don't know too many people who would. That doesn't make sense, does it? Spend $3,700 to potentially save $3,000. Well, all kinds of people are doing it. What I just described to you was the employee and family plan that's offered to the federal employees in North and Central Texas this year through the Scott and White healthcare system on their HMO plan. That's a true story. I cover this on my blog, I believe, that and people do this stuff. I mean, people will do it. In fact, let me pose a different scenario for you, Brian. Would you ever spend $3,200 extra in premiums just to save $1,500 off your deductible? You're going to spend $3,200, potentially save $1,500. You wouldn't do that, would you?
No.
I don't think you would. You're a good conservative man. Of course you wouldn't do that.
Yeah,
you're a fiscal conservative like me, so it doesn't make much sense, does it?
No.
Liberals, it might make sense, but anyway. But guess who did just that in 2015, Brian? 46,000 Texas teachers did just that in 2015. And by my calculations, in doing that, they wasted $150 million in premiums that they handed Aetna through the teachers' retirement system in Texas that they really did not need to hand Aetna. And all this because they can't add. They can't do a little math. And it makes me wonder how many of these teachers are teaching our kids math. But anyway, and this blog at healthcareonomics.com, the particular post there is called Texas Teachers Get Screwed Again. You can read that and see how that happened to them.
Yeah, that's that Common Core math, I guess.
It's got to be. Well, what it is, really, and really, I'm not gonna blame people for this because they're victims. They're being victimized by the health insurance industry, who are slicker than car salesmen could ever possibly hope to be. The health insurance industry wrote the book on sleazy sales tactics, believe me, because they sell their product through a mix of confusion, ignorance, and fear. They scare the wits out of people for not being covered, down to the bottom line for the flu shot, when the reality is that people ought to pay, in a perfect world, I can imagine paying, a couple of $100 a month to have this catastrophic coverage that takes over when I spend $10,000 and, maybe has $1 million lifetime cap, so the insurance company's got a little limit to their exposure or what have you. But, that to me would be the perfect ideal world. And let me ask you this, though. Let me ask you a question, if I may. How much do you think a doctor's office visit should be worth, or let's say an EKG, or a gallbladder operation, or a health insurance plan? And I'm going to answer the question for you. But the bottom line is these things should be worth whatever the market will bear, correct? I mean, that's what we get in free markets. Is if you want to go out and pay $400 for a purse, I'm not going to do that. But if you want to do that, do it. I mean, it's a free market. You can do it. They probably don't sell as many $400 purses as they do, $40 purses. But hey, the fact that they're selling them says that there are people out there who are willing to spend that kind of money. But it's a voluntary choice. It's a free market. Not so with our healthcare and health insurance industries. These things are about as anti-free market as you can get in the United States today, and that needs to change big time. And the only way that's going to change is when we get legislators in there who aren't bought off by these special interests. So I coined a phrase on Twitter. I love it. It's a pun on the old Journey song, "Don't Stop Believing." I call it "Don't Stop Repealing." Don't stop repealing, because we got to repeal all these laws, like not just Obamacare, but there's a law from 1973 that many people, many of your listeners, probably even you, have never heard of. It's called the HMO Act of 1973. This is what allowed health maintenance organizations, this is what allowed health insurance companies to do things that no other industry in the U.S. can, to my knowledge. They just cannot do this, and that is they price fix with their competitors. They go and they make deals with hospitals and doctors, and they price fix. They negotiate prices that you, with your $5,000 deductible, ultimately will have to pay. That would be illegal in any other industry. Any other industry couldn't get away with that. Also, what these HMOs and health networks do is they restrict your patient consumer choice. They tell you who you can and can't see. No other industry does that, Brian.
Yeah.
And then at the same token, they restrain my trade as a practitioner. I can't just see somebody who's on a particular plan because I won't get paid for that patient or what have you. This is ridiculous. This is all ridiculous, and it's all a product of federal government intervention going back 50 years almost, and we need to just start repealing these laws. I wrote a piece on my blog back in, I believe it was the summertime when all the rage was repeal and replace. Repeal and replace Obamacare. And to me, the question is, replace it with what? What are you going to replace it with? The whole point is just to repeal it and get rid of the law and let the free market do its thing. We don't need a replacement. The government has proven itself time and time again that it's horribly inept at providing us with solutions that drive down the prices of health insurance and health care, right?
Yeah.
So we don't need a replacement. What we need is to keep repealing. Unfortunately, virtually nobody up there in Congress outside of Senator Rand Paul, and our wonderful senator from the great state of Texas, Ted Cruz, unfortunately, I don't think too many of these other clowns up there are really willing to take on the health insurance industry and do the right thing for the American people. And we need to really consider that the next go-round at midterms in 2018, and then especially in 2020.
Well, that's
we
one
need to
thing.
start replacing some of these incumbents.
Well, that's one thing in particular is if you look at the who is donating to their campaigns, that definitely is an indicator. Indicator as far as where they're going to stand whenever these this legislation never comes across.
Fiscally, I'm as conservative as they get. Socially, I'm pretty liberal. I'm not really conservative. Socially, I'm pretty liberal. So I consider myself to be a libertarian, which I think is what most of the country is libertarian-minded, even if they don't know it. And so to me, it cuts across party lines. There are definitely, there's no Democrat that I'm fond of, believe me. I think that's evil. Democrats are evil in my book. They're very self-serving, not interested in the future of the nation. But Republicans can be just as self-serving in their own way. And so these Republicans who aren't doing the right thing, the Senators Collins, Murkowski, especially McCain, McCain, these people need to go. I mean, they need to go. They're not doing the right thing. They're sellouts for the health insurance industry. And just understand this. Every one of your listeners needs to understand that when you see health insurance, when you see health care legislation, it's usually not about health care. It's about health insurance. They've conflated those two terms. But when you do see this health insurance legislation, do not think for a moment that this hasn't been bought, paid for, and carefully crafted by the health insurance industry. Yeah. Can I give you a shocking statistic? Let me give you something that ought to shock your listeners, and that is this. In 2013, $744 billion, that's billion with a billion, Brian, $744 billion was spent on health insurance premiums by Americans. Now, of that, that's almost $750 billion for something that should be sold door to door, right? Now, of that money, 2/3 of that, almost $500 billion, went to just 25 health insurance companies. The biggest out there by far is United Health Group, United Healthcare. In 2016, you can look this up on Wikipedia. In 2016, United Healthcare did $187 billion in revenue. Guess how much McDonald's did? $26 billion. So McDonald's did 1/6 the revenue of United Health Group. Guess how much Microsoft did? $66 billion. Just a little over 1/3. Microsoft took in a little over 1/3 of how much United Healthcare did. Now, you tell me, do these companies really need billions and billions of extra taxpayer dollars in these subsidies? Do they? I don't think so.
Well, no, but they'll definitely take it as long as they can get that favor from their friends in Washington. So,
absolutely.
Now, I know you mentioned about, as far as wanting to educate everyone, and I guess I want to ask you, where can everyone get in touch with you, whether on social media and I guess also your books.
Sure. Now, I blog at healthcareonomics.com. It's sort of like Reaganomics or Voodoo economics. It's healthcareonomics.com, and you can Google me or Google my name. That'll take you to Healthcareonomics. That's kind of my one-stop shop for everything. Now you can find my books on there. You can find videos. You can find a link to my podcast, my YouTube channel, my SoundCloud channel. I've been on the radio quite a bit, done some podcasting myself, and et cetera, like I said. So you can find everything there. You can also read a lot of interesting stuff in my posts. Feel free to please comment on the posts if you like what you're reading. And then also, I'm on social media. I'm extremely active on Twitter. I tweet every day, all day. I schedule tweets out 24 hours a day, and that is HCOnomics. Or if you want to just, look on Twitter for Healthcareonomics, you'll find me. Got about 3,300 followers right now. And then on Facebook, it's also Healthcareonomics. And you can see that there. You can follow along there. But please share the information. I mean, again, what's going to change all this is people. People are going to be, well, if I may, let me say this. There are two things that face Americans today that are right there up in their face almost every day. And that is, first of all, the prices of health care. And then secondly, the prices of health insurance. The two are totally separate. So let's tackle the prices of health care first. In my book, in my first book, I close it out by pointing out that, look, it's up to you, to Americans, to change this. And the only way you're going to change it is by start insisting that you use your credit card instead of your health insurance card to pay for most of your routine health care. That is what's going to get the prices down the quickest, is when thousands and then millions of people start saying, pretend I don't have United Healthcare. In fact, my advice would be to your listeners, don't even tell these places you have health insurance, because once the cat's out of the bag, they'd much rather charge you $5,000 for an MRI than $350 for an MRI, which is what my patients pay when I send them for MRIs. It's $350. But I hope that everybody understands that the facility, wherever you're going, they would rather charge you $5,000 for your MRI, and they can do that if they bill it to Aetna or Cigna or United Healthcare. So what I advocate in my book is a form of lying, a la mainstream media style. Just lie. Just lie by omission. Tell them, I don't have health insurance. What's my cash price? And so once enough people start doing that routinely, you will see the prices of healthcare drop hugely. As President Trump would say, hugely. You'll see the prices of healthcare drop precipitously. And that will happen fairly quickly once enough people start demanding those prices. But the second thing that faces Americans is the price of health insurance. Now, the first thing they can do to save money there is to use my app. Actually, I didn't mention this yet, but I have what I call Dr. W's equation, and that helps people look at their health insurance plans and helps them compare and points out that, hey, look, don't spend $3,700 to potentially save $3,000. It does the math for you, and it's super easy to use. All you need to do is plug in your monthly premium or biweekly premium, whatever your premium amount is, how often you pay your premium, and then plug in your out-of-pocket maximum, and you can compare as many health insurance plans as you want. The app is available on the Google Android store right now. We are putting the finishing touches on the iOS, but it's $15, and I like to say that $15 could save you thousands more on your health insurance if you would just use the app. So that's the first thing that people can do, is to not over-insure themselves, and they can use my app to help them decide that they're not doing that and save some money. But really what's going to change the prices of health insurance is to have more competition enter that industry. And unfortunately, that is literally going to take an act, if not several acts, of Congress. They're going to have to repeal laws, like I said. They're going to have to eliminate networks, and I go over all this in my book as well, in my first book on how we can go about this. That's a pretty tough call, don't get me wrong. I understand you're talking about getting people, at the federal legislative level who are used to being paid by these special interests, and we're asking them now that, hey, look, we want you to not take that money. We want you to do the right thing. And I think it's not as difficult as, like, say, getting the Iran deal negated, though, because there's a driving force behind this, and that is ordinary Americans are being impacted every day by the decisions that are being made by these legislators regarding health insurance. And so if we can put enough pressure on them and perhaps, turn over a few incumbent seats over this, then hopefully at some point there will be a critical mass reached, and all these sitting legislators and new legislators that come up through the ranks will get the idea that, hey, look, we gotta quit paying so much attention to the health insurance lobby and allow more competition into that industry by repealing certain laws and regs.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back to what you mentioned. It comes down to the people as far as wanting to hold these legislators accountable. So
yes,
Doctor,
grassroots. Very.
Appreciate everything in these past few minutes. I hope everyone that's listening has really been informed and really have at least a better idea as far as maybe to wanting to change things and how they view health insurance or in healthcare. So I really appreciate it.
Well, I really appreciate it. I appreciate you having me on, Brian, very much, because this is the only way that it's going to change. Is the mainstream media will not touch this idea. Trust me. I've tried through. I've been in touch with Sean Hannity's producer. Been in touch with Mark Levin's senior producer. Been in touch with Michael Savage's radio show producer. None of them will touch this. They're not interested in getting this word out for whatever reason. So it's going to take small grassroots folks like you and me, and the YouTubers of the world. We're going to have to get this message spreading like wildfire. So please, your listeners, help spread this message. We need it, because it's the only thing that's going to change the healthcare system. The sooner we do it, the sooner everybody will be better off, for sure.
All right, Dr. Wacasey. Appreciate so much for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Yep, and thanks to Dr. Wacasey for joining us. And that's it. Until next week, chat with you later.